right, good evening. Happy Saturday. I was just doing some studying on a couple of different things. One was the current move to reclassify desiccated natural thyroid as a biologic. So things like insulin, complex proteins, monoclonal antibodies, and vaccines. They're trying to put a bunch of stuff into the box of biologics. And what's important about this is it's based on one thing, having more standardization, I guess is what they'll say. And therefore, standardization just means more safety for the sake of argument on the, I guess, the pro side of changing the access to NDT, which is quite often something that you'll have to be dealing with a compounding pharmacist for, or you're just getting Armor or MP Thyroid. But either way, it's consolidating power and taking it away from people having more choice. And that's what it's coming down to, is the FDA reclassifying these medications into the biologics and then saying, oh, it's this type of drug. And so therefore, we're going to have to tell everyone that it's a more complicated medication and therefore it needs more regulation. So it's loss of freedom ultimately. And if you think that it's because they have your best interests at heart, it will very much behoove you to go research the lack of any level of adverse events with the use of Armor, Thyroid, or any desiccated desiccated natural thyroid. So there is none. There are no adverse events. There's no problems with desiccated natural thyroid whatsoever. So the next step is, well, we need to have better standardization. Now, it will behoove you to also know that 2008, the makers of levothyroxine, Synthroid were caught with less regulation than they needed because they were actually not as tight on their dosing, whether it was too high or too low. They actually were supposed to be completely standardized. And, only 17 years ago, they were caught and they were found out. And part of that was because that was grandfathered in. The levothyroxine and synthetics were grandfathered in the 1960s or 70s when some laws changed and some regulations changed for medications. So anyway, going back to natural desiccated thyroid, NDT hormone therapy, it's about monopolies and it's about power. It's not about healthcare. If this was about safety issues and dangers, then we would read about people having high blood pressure or heart attacks or something to that effect, and that's just not the case. You will find zero evidence for it, and there's been research that's been done with the comparison between levothyroxine T4 and Armor for adverse events, symptoms, problems like that, and there were none. There is no significant difference between whether it was levothyroxine and or Armor in the mix. If anything, there was a benefit when people had T4 and T3 availability in the natural desiccated thyroid form. So, that said, right now, from what I just saw today, supposedly, there's been a pullback on maybe the reclassification of natural desiccated thyroid, and maybe they won't put it into the biologics. I'm not sure what the case is, but basically what they're trying to do is make people, small companies like compounding pharmacists, have to apply for a biologic licensing it's a biologic licensing application, and it's a lot of hoops for people to jump through, small independent businesses. But the one group that won't have a problem with this, that will take it over essentially, will be who? Does anyone know who's going to be the one group that's not small, that's going to have the ability and the time and the money to pay for this licensing that the FDA has created, to reclassify it as something new and unique? What is it? Desiccated, dried out. It's just dried up thyroid gland from a pig or a cow, sometimes sheep. I don't think I've seen anyone talk about that. Rusty, have half a thyroid, possibly not working right, even with blood work being normal. Yeah, Rusty, that's totally possible. I would be, well, as a male, number one, I'd be curious if you have Hashimoto's in the background, you know, as far as your lineage goes, your heritage, your family. If you do, it's a strong chance that that's actually Hashimoto's. And removing the thyroid gland is, it's necessary when it is, but a lot of times it's not. It's just, it's up to whoever your doctors are ultimately. So is Hashimoto's in the background? Is there any rheumatoid or celiac or any issues with autoimmune also in the background? And I'm assuming you're asking because you just don't feel like you have the energy you should, but absolutely no energy. I can't tell how old you are by your profile. You could be in your 50s, 60s, 70s. I'm not sure. I don't mean to disrespect you by age, but that said, there's primarily thyroid's going to be your first concern. If the testing doesn't look quite right, then you're going to be faced with this challenge. Your doctors typically are using the reference range on your test, so that reference range is based on sick people. It's based on people already taking medications. It's all mixed together. It's a complete crapshoot about who's actually healthy and got a great thyroid test. Everything's just mixed together on a bell curve. So if you have that understanding, do a thumbs up. There's 14 people on here, so how many of you understand that the reference range that's used says everybody and their grandmother and daughter and everyone that feels like crap is mixed in, which is not a really great place to start, is it? Urticarial vasculitis, yeah, that and other autoimmune conditions, Mimi. Or there's two of you with the same avatar. Who was that? Ronnie. So, you know, the people that are on there saying, okay, I get it. My reference range over here, like for instance, if we talk about, who asked that? Rusty? You're 69? Okay, so I knew you're somewhere between 50 and 70. It's a good guess. What is that, a 30% chance I was going to be right? Anyway, go grab your testing if you're so inclined and do your TSH, and next to that put the reference range in there, unless it's LabCorp, which it should be somewhere around 0.45 and 4.5. LabCorp keeps pretty consistent on that, but you will see variations even in LabCorp depending on where you're at in the country. So TSH by itself is kind of a useless indicator of thyroid health. Now that said, if you have a 7, 10, 15 TSH, there's a good chance that there's Hashimoto's the higher that number goes. So if you've been told you have a 70 or 100 TSH, there's a really good chance the higher that number goes, it's just straight up Hashimoto's. But regardless, you could still have a TSH of 2 and still have Hashimoto's. So I don't like TSH by itself. If I had one test I was going to run to see what the health of the thyroid is doing, if I had no other choice, it would be just free T3. Free T3 would be absolutely the best test, and it would give me more options to understand what's going on. But for me, I like to have a 9-point test. I don't want one test if I can have 9. Do a thumbs up if you agree with that. Like, why limit your options? The test itself might cost, I can't remember. I think if you get TSH, T4, T3, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, free T3 uptake, free thyroxine index, TPO, thyroid globulin antibody, and reverse T3. I don't know if I said that. I forgot. That's like $100, $110 test. That's worth it to me. And it tells you about brain chemistry and brain hormones being TSH. Tells you about communication between the thyroid gland and the brain, the pituitary gland specifically. Then it tells you about production of the T4 hormone, which is the stored form of it essentially. Your body can't use that. It has to turn it into T3 gasoline. So right there, I already have a whole bunch of information. Go down the chain, it tells you about T3 uptake is, binding to what's called thyroid binding globulin. And what's the other one? Or globulin, thyroid binding protein. Same thing. and reverse T3. That tells me about potentially sickness, inflammation, and things that will drive a wedge between, like basically it's a gas pedal and a brake. Reverse T3 is a brake to the production of thyroid hormone, and things that will drive that up are infections, massive tissue injury, and destruction. There's all kinds of things that will influence that. Sometimes your body does not want to have thyroid hormone produced for safety. So maybe Rusty, if you have that number or those numbers, that would be great. Donna 888, referral to a person without a thyroid. I'm not sure what you're asking me. I have patients with no thyroid. I've had many patients with no thyroid, and we'll go in and test them, and sometimes they'll actually be still making thyroid hormone. So do a heart if you did not know that you could have your full thyroid removed and your body still figures out how to make those cells and put thyroid hormone out. Thyroid hormone is the key to your metabolism. It's the key to your brain health and growth and repair, DNA synthesis. So it's kind of important. Tammy Bishop, thanks for the gifts, Tammy. I see your number 3 spot there. I appreciate it. Any recommendation for malabsorption issues? You're not my patient, so I can't make any recommendations to you. I can just talk about things that we do. If there's an issue with absorbing, I think you're talking about B vitamin, maybe iron, that kind of stuff, then it's a double-edged sword because you need iron in order to make thyroid hormone and obviously oxygen and whatnot. And then the B vitamins are a part of that. Depending on where that's at, we would want to also consider, is pernicious anemia an issue? So Tammy, I don't know if you've had multiple autoimmune testing, but that might be another consideration. And how do you handle that? It's always going to go back to microbiome and gut support. Very simple things. If you want to start looking at that right now, for me, if it were myself, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking about me. If I were dealing with malabsorption issues, I would be looking at things like SIBO. I would be considering leaky gut. I would also be considering things that are insulting to my gut lining and the inflammation that it's dealing with. And foods can be that. It can be an H. pylori infection. H. pylori infections are a very common thing in thyroid patients, by the way. So, do you go in and kill the H. pylori first, or do we look at the microbiome first? I like looking at blood, and then I usually will go into hormone testing, and that's by blood or urine, and then we'll dig into potentially H. pylori testing, their breath test, and or stool testing. So, issues been through Synthroid, Tirosint, and MP thyroid, and waxing and waning levels. Tammy, I'm not sure. I need more context, but I'm wondering if you put down your Hashis or not. Tammy, acquired hypothyroidism secondary to thyroidectomy. Okay. Also have Crohn's and absorption issues. Got it. I didn't see all that before, so yeah, it still stands the way what I said. The only thing I'm wondering about is with the celiac was there any investigation into iron levels? I'd love to see your iron levels. Or I'm sorry, Crohn's, not celiac, Crohn's. SD Benson, you are asking people to pay for tests? I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Has anyone heard me ask for anyone to pay for a test? If you want a test, then your insurance won't cover it. Here's the best part. You have somebody like, I think that's a question that's trying to consider that how dare somebody have to pay for a test? Sounds kind of ignorant to me, because if you're not getting the full gamut of the tests from your doctors, what does that tell you? If your doctors aren't willing to do a 9-point thyroid test, and or they tell you the insurance won't cover it, what's left? You have to pay for it. I'm not paying for it. Why would I pay for it? That's crazy. Does anyone think that guy's kind of a knucklehead? Yeah, Rusty said, even in Canada we pay. Thank you, Rusty. I've never had a patient walk in and say, my doctor and the insurance all agreed to pay for my full thyroid testing. That's never happened ever, not once. Donna, the 9-point test is the okay, I'll do it one more time. I thought we might have a download for you so you can actually request it if you want to, but I'll tell you it. TSH, okay, you guys know that one. Total T4, total T3, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, free thyroxine index. Did I say T3 uptake? I think I did. Thyroid peroxidase antibody and thyroid globulin antibody. Those are the tests we run. If there's any consideration or concern around Graves as a possibility, because you can be both, then we'll run what's called a TRAB, TSI test. Okay? So I hope you got all that. Oh man, I thought a mosquito was on my foot. I got my tripod here sitting in my lap and felt this little fly just land on there. Yeah, Donna, the difficult part here is like the one account said, oh my gosh, somebody has to pay for their tests. You guys get into this conundrum as patients go, hey doc, I don't feel good. My energy is really low, brain fog, my libido is low. I'm not losing weight despite exercising. I can't get out of bed in the morning. My tongue is swollen. My patient the other day had this going on. Very swollen tongue. I constantly am bloated after I eat my meals. I have seen changes in the light of my eyes, so to speak. The sparkle in my eyes is not the same. The outer third of my eyebrows is falling out. In fact, my hair is falling out. All of these things scream metabolic disease and hormone issues. And typically, it does not take a very astute clinician of any kind to say, your thyroid might be having issues. That's like first thing, right? So then the patient goes in, gets the TSH and maybe T4 tests. This is the standard of care. You know, you might have someone special who really likes this stuff, and maybe they're a specialist in thyroid health, and maybe it's an endo, maybe it's an internist, maybe it's a doc in training, a student. Maybe you go to a student medical school. Anyway, they go in and they'll say, wow, I want to run a couple more tests. At best, you might get a T4 and a T3 on top of that, 3 of those tests. If there is any past history, family history of Hashimoto's, they may potentially run TPO testing, and that stops. So that's 4 tests at best that I've seen in most cases. Not always, but the ones that do more testing than that are not practicing typical healthcare and standard of care type of approach. They're using a functional medicine model or integrative medicine or above and beyond, whatever they might call it, okay? And then it stops. And then they'll say, well, your TSH is high. Levothyroxine is our next step, and whatever the dose might be. Maybe it's 88, 150, 200, whatever. Then usually it's not going to be high right out the gate. So they test you. They might check you out in 3 months. Maybe it's 6. And they'll say, you're going to lose weight. You're going to feel better. Your brain fog's going to be gone, and everything's going to be honky-dory. Everything's going to be great. And hopefully it will. Maybe it's just straight up hypothyroidism, which means low thyroid hormone production in your body. Okay? 9 times out of 10, that's not it. That's not where it stops. You go back in and say, oh, I felt a little better for a few months, and then I notice I'm not as good as I think I should be. And the doc will look at TSH at best, maybe TSH and T4. And then they'll say, well, your TSH is somewhere around 3.0. T4 is 1.0. We look good. You're doing fine. And they'll tell you to keep taking the meds and keep an eye on things and let them know if anything goes weird. That's it. And that'll go on for months, years, and decades. As long as that TSH checks out, the standard of care really doesn't require much more investigation above and beyond that test. And that's where you get stuck, because little do you know that maybe your body is having an issue with absorption issues. Crohn's disease, celiac, gut issues go hand in hand with thyroid issues. Thyroid hormone feeds the cells of the gut that make stomach acid, that hormone, and they keep it going, right? If you have a 30 or 40% reduction in thyroid hormone in the body, can you imagine what happens to the ability of your gut to keep on top of the food you're supposed to be digesting? What about your liver and your production of cholesterol? What about your pancreas and the production of insulin or glucagon in the liver? Whatever it may be. glucagon in the pancreas, not the liver, but bile acids. So many of my patients through the years noticed, like, as their thyroid seemed to be worse, there was also indigestion issues, and bile acid is a big problem with thyroid hormone production. So I don't want to discourage you from talking to whoever your primary care provider is. That's not the goal here. I do want you to be savvy enough to walk in and expect that they keep you in line and they keep you going down the cattle chute for thyroid hormone patients, which is just giving you those meds. And then when things get bad enough, your blood pressure gets worse, your blood sugars get worse, they'll add another med here and there. Suddenly you're on statins because they're not telling you that low thyroid hormone causes higher cholesterol levels. Your body's ability to keep up with digestion and fatty acids and cholesterol all goes down. So they have a magical solution where you're on more and more medications over time. So the discouragement is not seeing your doctors, it's understanding that they're pretty limited in what they're going to tell you if you fit the bill for TSH, just like Rusty was asking first thing. He said, man, I'm missing half my thyroid, I'm on hormones, but I'm not feeling right. And he has a hunch, his intuition's saying maybe there's something else going on with this thyroid. It could be conversion issues from T4 to T3. Okay, like before, I forgot her name, but she said, I have digestion issues. I don't absorb my nutrients and minerals as well as I should be. B1 vitamin is my number one problem for thyroid patients. Thiamine. Thiamine, if you look up what thiamine does, suddenly your brain will explode. If you're really suffering, your brain will explode with how that will affect your physiology throughout your body. You will be probably checking off some boxes like, I bet I'm B vitamin deficient. B1, B2, typically B3, but B1, B2, folate, B12, these are your big ones. Does it mean to just go out and take that supplement? Not necessarily. What if you could improve your ability to break down the food and suddenly the meat, like liver, that carries those things in it, is able to be broken down and assimilated, and then your body starts picking up the pieces again. That's the ultimate goal. It shouldn't be on endless supplements. I mean, do I use them? Absolutely. I use the supplements to get you to point A to point B. If I had my way, you might be taking one or two things at best, only because of what we find on your tests, not 6 to 10 bottles of stuff. I had one patient, I think she was on $1,000 a month worth of supplements. No joke. And that's ridiculous. That's insane, and it's lazy. Something's being missed. The doctor she was working with was not doing a great job. And that's the nature of things. And sometimes people get stuck in a way of thinking. There are people who practice, like green healthcare or natural healthcare, and they think everything comes through a bottle or a pill, just like a pharmaceutically based doctor or practitioner of any kind. So there's a definite process to this. Just going to your doc, asking for the test, what's that going to yield you? If your TSH doesn't say it's high, they're more than likely not going to raise that dose anyway. You have to look at this from a different perspective and juxtapose yourself and understand that pharmaceuticals, when they have their place, they have their place. Generally speaking, 99% of us don't need them. Where did I go to medical school? I didn't. Isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing I just spit out all that knowledge and I didn't go to medical school? Thank God. Otherwise, I'd be pushing drugs on here, like that idiot Terry Simpson. A gastric bypass doctor. He's killing people. I may ask to go to a thyroid specialist. Yeah, it's just going to be your endocrinologist. And then what? So Rusty, that's the next step. Your TSH says you're at 3, right? I don't know if you put any numbers down, but let's just say that your TSH is at 3. And then what do? They might entertain the thought, Rusty, just as an example, that they check T3, and let's say they think it's a little low, like it's 1.5, free T3. Okay, well, they might throw you on some, Cytomel or something. And then, that may work out. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Or is it the conversion of T4 to T3 that you're having a problem with? It's hard to say. Country girl for life, thyroid nodules, Hashimoto's, first and foremost. Secondarily, lack of nutrition, low iodine, or bigger, more nefarious things like cancer. So now take that into perspective. Guess how many times it has to do with malnourishment, not getting the right food in your body, versus the big C word. It's all the little things that build up, but Hashimoto's would be your number one thing. Isn't that crazy? And there's practitioners out there that say, we have some, we better take it out just to be case. That should make you think twice. That happens a lot, and a lot of patients talk about, it wasn't that bad. I went to 2 different doctors. One really scared me, so I just did it. Angela, what's considered good numbers? Put your numbers in, Angela. That'll make it easier. So just do, I don't know how many different tests you've got. I just looked at the corner of my sliding glass door here, and I need to do a bunch of caulking, damn it. Got a couple of spots there. It's driving me nuts. But put your numbers in. TSH, T4, T3, whatever you got. Let's see what you got. Got a question. I recently had my thyroid medicine reduced 50 micrograms. Lizzie, that seems backwards to me. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. So you had it reduced. He said it was too high. I don't know. Maybe he's looking at other tests though. T4 and T3. Maybe T4 and T3 were too high, regardless of TSH being high as well. I think you wrote that right. Maybe you miswrote what you meant. Is that a possibility? Chai or Shy, I'm not sure which that is. Type 1 diabetic, and how my antibodies for were over 700. Prescribed Synthroid, feel terrible. Yeah, because something's being missed in your diagnosis, and it's multiple autoimmune at that point too. So Chai or Shy, there's more going on than just throwing Synthroid at it. Think of it this way: if your body's destroying your thyroid gland, okay, literally tearing it down, destroying it, what is adding more T4 hormone going to do to your body at that point? Anyone put your guess in, your best guess. Put your best guess in. What's happening just because I add more T4 hormone? In the meantime, your body's destroying that. And this can be a thing in diabetes as another complication. You're remembering that type 1 diabetes is the destruction of beta cells and potentially even insulin. So if you're adding insulin into the system, and that body already is kind of looking at insulin as a problem, as an immune system problem, what happens when you add more insulin in? Kind of a wild thought, and it's a real thing, by the way. And most of your doctors don't look at it. Yeah, so let's go back to that. Let me rephrase that. I've had type 1 diabetics who, when they take their insulin, their blood sugars go nuts some days, and other days they're fine. Think about that. Insulin's supposed to shuttle the sugar, take it up, and deliver it to the cells, but at least get the blood sugars down. What happens when they actually take 10, 20 units, and they say their blood sugars go way up? What's going on there? Any ideas? Shai, you could answer that if you like. chai or shy. Yeah, so the insulin is, in one way, it's adding fuel to the fire for the diabetes for the type 1 patient. Now, I've had that in type 2 patients that are what you would call type 1.5. So they're on their way to autoimmune diabetes, but they're in between stages. Because a lot of patients do end up becoming, I guess you'd say, immune system intolerant of diabetes or insulin. So you start seeing more reactions. So if you've ever had that, if you are a type 1 diabetic and you're watching, and you notice sometimes taking insulin, you see things go way up, just consider doing an insulin antibody test and see if it's positive. It's very simple. And if it's not, great. And it, more than one would be ideal if you keep seeing it happen, maybe 2 or 3 of those tests. But more unlikely, if you see it positive, then you're going to have some other issues that need to be handled. Is Armour thyroid medication superior to levothyroxine? It depends on what research you look at and obviously what voice you're listening to. To me, I just care about what the patient tells me and if they like it better. So I've had patients that will tell me Armour thyroid made them feel terrible. There are reasons for that. Sometimes it's because they don't need the T3. Maybe they only need T4 and their body does take T4 into T3. Fine. And they'll tell you Synthroid was the magical point for them, or vice versa, levothyroxine. So it always depends on the patient themselves. I'm just catching up on some. I had an ultrasound, but they said just watch it. Yeah. So Country Girl for Life, more than likely you have something like Hashimoto's in the mix. And if you haven't had this done already, get an antibody test done for Hashimoto's. It's not going to hurt anything. So you want TPO and thyroid globulin antibody. I would just pull the full thyroid, the 9-point test, unless you know of other autoimmune diseases in your family. So if do you have autoimmune disease in your family, in your lineage? Cal-Lin. 96, 97 temp every morning, signs of hypothyroid. Potentially, but where is that temperature at? Is that in your armpit? Or is that, just on the skin? So, and how long is that temperature being taken? So Cal-Lin, there's a little bit more to it than just taking that temperature. We want an axillary read. We want that done first thing in the morning. Preferably, I don't know if you're still having a cycle or not, but if you're still having your cycle, we want a few days after your period. And then take it, 10 minutes, a sheet, maybe not even a blanket, just something. You're going to be cold, so that's the hard part. If you are hypothyroid, you're probably going to be cold, but we actually want you to take that from the armpit, hold it there for 10 minutes and not have a bunch of covers or even sweatshirt or pajamas on, okay? And that'll tell you a little bit more about what's going on. So what was the case with that? That's a good question, by the way. How many of you have ever done that? How many of you wondered you're, number one, hypothyroid, and you're told you're fine, but your temperature, your core temperature is always low? How many of you done the temperature testing and figured out maybe you do have hypothyroid? I'm not sure what this one is for. Okay, Angela, let me see if you got anything else. Okay, here we go. Lacey was switched from Levo to Armour. Bad mistake. Yeah, see, Lacey's a good example. She was doing fine with Levo, I think is what you're saying, and Armour did not do well by her. What were the symptoms or side effects? Did you have heart palpitations or you just felt like crap? Lizzie's taken thyroid since 28. How old are you? So Angela, not sure what this one is for, T3 or T4 or TSH, but was 7.47. Probably TSH. I mean, I would be a little bit surprised if your T3 or T4 were that high. That would not be good. Well, total T4 depends. If it's free T4, that's one thing. If it's total T4, then it's going to be like 7, 8, 9 is actually a good number. So it's, I don't know. I don't have to tell you there. So total T4, that could be potentially a good number. 6 to 12 would be functional. TSH, we don't want it really any higher than 2. And that depends on how you feel at that level too, but, or as well. So 0.5 to a half, sometimes I have patients that feel pretty good in that range, but somewhere around 1 actually seems to be better than not. Again, it depends on the person though. And then if it's a free T3 test, that would be insane. Like, I would think that you're having a heart attack if you haven't already. If it's total T3, it would be insanely low. So you got to figure out which one it is. More than likely, I'm going to go with a 50-50 chance. I'm going to say that it's T4 if you see T4 on the list. 61, 28, what is that? 38 years? Or 33 years? 33 years. Is 1.14 normal? It's certainly within the reference range, as you know. And I would say if you feel well at that number, that would be your normal. It would be the other tests I'd be more interested in before we say anything's normal. Autoimmune runs in your family. Then still, Alan, are you asking because you don't feel good at that normal or at that TSH level, 1.14? Postmenopausal? Autoimmune runs in the family. So are you Hashis or do you know? Man, that bird's just going off. And you guys are sucking on the likes tonight. I'm working my ass off here, sitting on my porch. Still, Alan, I feel fatigued 24/7. Okay, so TSH being at that level, there's a possibility that you have what's called a pituitary suppression pattern. So pituitary will basically look like everything's fine. TSH leaving the anterior pituitary, it's going to keep it suppressed. What we need are the T4 and T3 tests to see where you're at. Not converting T4 to T3. So Angela, how is your digestion? How well do you digest protein, or do you avoid protein, like first thing in the morning? So you get up, ideally 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. Do you get up and go straight for carbohydrates or some coffee? Or do you have an aversion to protein in the morning? Do you feel kind of sick, just the thought of eating protein? Because the key to a lot of the conversion, what's coming out of your protein, ideally beef. But also, your cortisol, your DHEA, your adrenal health, and your circadian rhythm. There's a part of that in the mix. You feel sick in the AM. So when we're thinking about cortisol, we're thinking about blood sugar issues first thing in the morning. And then the idea of protein specifically makes you feel like you're going to get sick or kind of nauseous. That's a classic presentation with thyroid patients. And guess what? They're not up and running. The gut is not up and running. The cortisol is not, kicking in like it should be, or has its struggles. You're usually waking up at 1 or 2 in the morning. Your blood sugars are dysregulated. Blood sugar dysregulation causes your dopamine and serotonin levels to go down. That'll influence your pituitary, which then influences your TSH. TSH is not really a great measure of how healthy you are with regard to thyroid health. Are there any other hormones, Angela, that are being measured for the tumor? Aqua butterfly. Yep. Morning. You feel sick in the mornings too? Graves' disease at 9. Are you in Hashimoto or hypothyroid now, or what did they end up doing with that? Lizzie, things are worse with mobility since changing meds from active to not so active. Lizzie, and I think you said you're 61, right? You're in the eye of the storm. And I don't say this to scare you, so please, uh, all I can tell you is you have to take a huge amount of action now. You better get on this because the years are slipping by. You have to get on top of your ability to get your body basically back on track the best you can with where you're at. And it doesn't just come through a bottle. It has to do with sleep hygiene. First and foremost, sleep hygiene and having exposure to the sun. How many of you, do a thumbs up if you feel adequate with your exposure to morning sun and evening sun. This is my third time out in the sun today, by the way. Not necessarily directly under it, but definitely out in the light. Third time on a Saturday. I'm probably pushing 3 hours of sunlight exposure right now. How many of you shoot for at least 2 hours of, let's say 20 minutes in the early morning, somewhere between 7 and 9 in the morning? Do a thumbs up. Shirley Girl. I know Shirley Girl's on it. Well done. I have no thyroid. They can't get meds right. I have gastro issues. Interesting. When you say they can't get them right, are you just saying that the dose never seems like it's stable? Or the thyroid levels are stable? What's kind of the story there? Robin, I try. Nice. So that's one part of the equation. It's not something you buy. You can't get it from a bottle. You can't buy it from a supplement or a medication. You have to be connected to the sun and the very broad balance of sunlight, UVA, UVB, infrared. All that stuff happens first thing in the morning. Not at noon, not at 3. I mean, it's better to get it than not. But that early morning light literally tells our bodies how to heal, how to grow, how to metabolize, how to repair, rebuild, adapt. It's all in the sunlight in the morning. It's almost as if we're all meant to be agrarian farmers digging in and taking care of livestock. I swear to God. The clock that's in the sky is actually keeping us alive and healthy. Rory, welcome to the show. I don't see your avatar, Rory, but that's weird. Oh no, I do. I see it at the top. Aqua, you're hypo now. So Aqua, you have a double-edged sword here. You're actually a great case. So Aqua said she was at one point in Graves, 9 years old, and then bam, I can't see your avatar. Let me see here. Aqua, I'm going to say you're in your 20s. So let's say 10, 15, 20 years later, she's now Hashi's. Do you see that being a hyperthyroid patient is deadly? That can be deadly. Hypothyroid isn't caught as easily, although it can have a significant curse on your life and health. In the meantime, all they're going to do is throw levothyroxine at her. Unless I'm wrong, maybe they've got Cytomel in there too, Aqua. But what are you doing? What's your mix of things right now? Oops. Lizzie, I love the heat. It's the only thing that relieves the pain. Oh, you're 45? Okay, so is there any other autoimmune disease going on, or even the potential or suspicion of it? Do you have that in the back of your mind? Because having 2 autoimmune diseases, Graves and Hashimoto's, probably means that you've got the potential for other, for sure. If you have one, it's not a far-fetched to end up with 2 or 3, like she has. Star, could this be making my body hurt? Sure. The lack of hormones, even estrogen, testosterone, lack of hormones, thyroid hormone, even vitamin D3 is a hormone, by the way, not a vitamin. It is a hormone. And the lack thereof will absolutely cater to higher inflammation levels, less lubrication in the joints, less repair in the muscles, even the bone. If there's less repair and metabolism of every cell of your body with less thyroid hormone, that gives you the answer. You have an impaired metabolic system with regard to every cell of the body. Yeah, are they checking any other tests, Angela? Is there any other testing going on, is what I mean by that. they always check TSH, sometimes T4, and you just adjust the meds. So what happened, Aqua, is they essentially know that your thyroid was destroyed by Graves, your thyroid was, and now it doesn't produce, and now they just have to keep an eye on it and make sure that you have enough T4 in there, and it's assumed that the T3 will just convert. So if you don't even know what your T3 levels are and you don't know if you're converting, that would be the first place to start. And it's probably Hashimoto's as well, which means you're still fighting autoimmune disease. And you're not even fighting it. I hate that premise. The idea of your body fighting itself is in a way, it's inaccurate. What it is the immune system is trying to do its job. It's overwhelmed and becomes confused to what it should be doing based on constant inflammation and injury in the body. And the more it has to clean something up in a certain area, the more sensitive it becomes to those tissues and cells. Hence, it basically starts thinking that, let's say like with celiac, that the gut cells are part of the problem and they become part of the immune system response. So it's trying to do it the best it can at the same time as it's confused. And that's deadly. With hypothyroid, Hashimoto's, and Graves', there's a larger consideration between gut health and brain health, specifically the cerebellum. Diagnosed with SIBO, so that's certainly going to affect pain levels. And there's testing for that too, to go above and beyond just a SIBO test. Yeah, Angela, not converting T4 to T3 is common. It is very common. Think of it this way. So there's 60 people on here. How many of you have been told by your doctors, your general doctors, whoever's giving you these scripts for Synthroid or levothyroxine, that you need B vitamins to help your body make levothyroxine into the active T3 form? Do a heart if your doctor, who's a general practitioner, not a functional medicine person, or integrative, or nutritionist, just your regular old doctors, how many of them told you your B vitamins are a massive part of turning these things into inactive T4 into active T3? So, 60 people on here. You're going to be hard pressed to find anyone that's been told any of this. That should piss you off a little bit, because thyroid patients tend to have obviously a slower metabolism, but then their gut health is screwed up. So someone had said they got checked for SIBO. If your gut health is impaired, your peristalsis slows down and your ability to absorb nutrients is slowed down, and you're constipated. I mean, you guys are usually constipated with hypothyroid. What's happening to the ability of the body to maintain a normal microbiome with the stool sitting in the gut longer? It's screwing up that microbiome, going from the small intestine to the large, because it's a delayed response, and that's not how our intestinal microbiome and flora are meant to work. And by the way, they provide some of the B vitamin conversion. They do a lot of the nutritional work for us. So this should kind of blow your mind. Like right now, this isn't to, toot my own horn, so to speak, but how many of you have your mind blown with the connections I just made for you? Do a thumbs up. Because hopefully this gives you a little bit more power and a little bit of mobility, metaphorically speaking, with your mind and what's going on with your health at the moment. That's my job. That's my passion in life. How do I help people get to the point they have just small chunks of points of improvement of how they understand things, so that they can take power and massive action against the point of ignorance they're at, and maybe even their doctors. Doctors aren't stupid, but when the physiology that they're taught is just giving people medications, one bottle after another, then they're a lot of times in the same place you are, believe it or not. I've had patients come to me with steam coming out of their ears when they go to them with very specific physiological questions that they cannot answer. The doctors can't answer their patient. And the doctors know that they should be able to. It's not because they're stupid, you guys. It's just because Big Pharma runs it. It's pretty simple. One med after another, prescription, get you out of the office within 2 to 3 minutes. Guess what? Healthcare is not easy. It's hard work, and it takes cultivation. You know, you can't just put a garden in your backyard. You can't take care of this yard like I have behind me and, you know, go water it and then just walk away. You actually have to cultivate it, right? Your body probably gets less attention than your actual yard does from you. Not that that's your fault. It's just that's the level of ignorance that American society is in anyway, at the very least. So health comes with cultivation. It doesn't come through a bottle, any kind of bottle. It comes with cultivation and intention. And that includes healthy relationships. Your health is absolutely tied to the ability to have healthy relationships and not be stressed out all the time. And if any doctor tells you your thyroid and relationships aren't connected, get a new doctor. They're full of shit and they just think everything's mechanical. You don't want a mechanically thinking doctor. There's a lot more nuance in this world and a lot more going on than what the eyes can see and what we can measure in a test. Robin, sun, sleep, good food, and exercise. Yep. Ideally, food that you actually grow and raise yourself. You know, that you're actually digging in the ground for. As an example, you know, everyone's told, take probiotics and prebiotics and postbiotics, right? When you go digging in the ground, you're digging in ground that's not laden with glyphosate. So, glyphosate aside, and just ground that's uncontaminated, the real deal, like we're in the Shire, the Hobbit, and you're digging in that ground, that is one of your biggest probiotics right there. That gets underneath your fingernails, the bacteria spread all over your hand. You smell the bacteria, which means it's actually entering into your nasopharynx and your respiratory system, which is actually building your immune system right then and there. That's a probiotic. Yeah, the glyphosate question in Cargill and Monsanto, man. I was just reading about the Cargill family and their ability to corner the market on small farms back in the early 1900s. Pretty interesting read, along with the Monsanto family and the chemical industry and the DuPonts. All very well worth reading on. It is infuriating. In fact, there's two things going on. So there's the stuff we all know about, glyphosate, genetically modified foods, blah, blah, blah. And that's why I got on tonight. I was studying the biological licensing application that, you know, Armor, for instance, and these different companies are going to have to apply for, which they'll probably be fine. But the compounding pharmacists that are actually helping people in real time, the clinicians that are out there putting together the perfect scenario for you if you need thyroid hormone, those are the ones that are going to suffer. And they're trying to make them go away, by the way. So, you know, those are the artists. Those pharmacists are no joke. They know their shit. But the other half of this is the blue light exposure. You know, I'm being exposed to blue light right now with this phone. Everything overhead. You know, when they changed the incandescence, that was Obama's presidency. I'm nonpartisan. I could care less who's in power. All I can tell is we're not invited to the table that these so-called leaders are. We are not in the same circles. So being nonpartisan helps alleviate your mind of who you should follow. Go with your gut and always stay true to your own compass. Have no heroes. Kill your heroes. Don't have heroes ever. That said, the blue light is absolutely interfering with the metabolism in our bodies. So when the incandescent lights come back out, they're more of a full spectrum light. They're not just blue. And by the way, the other light, there's the basic LEDs, and then there's the other one. I forgot the name of it. It's like the curly Q looking one with the mercury in it. The ones that they released at first. God, what are those called? There's a name for that type of light. Everyone started using them about 15 years ago. It's like curly Q. I know there's mercury in it. You don't want to break them. They're more dangerous for the environment for sure. Those even have a worse effect on us than the LEDs. So, point being is the incandescents are a huge key to eliminating this blue light plague that's on us at the moment. Massive, massive, massive. Get them when they come out. Hi from Ohio. How are you? I'm great. I'm about to go eat. About to hop off. Not fluorescent. It's a different type. It's close, Cat and Tex, but not halogen. Excuse me. All right, I'm going to hop off for the evening. Make some food. Have a good night. Hop off for the evening. Make some food. Have a good night.